This video covers giving options, and we should start by defining what that is. It is simply any project or function that you present to donors for donations. It could be your general operating expenses, a new building you are building, a program that needs funding, etc. Each giving option will eventually become its own web page, and the selections you make in setting up the giving options will carry through with that donation. Before we can set up a new giving option, we first have to create some other records that will be needed in the giving option. We need a fund code, an appeal code, a letter, and an interest code. First, let's define a fund and appeal code. A fund code tracks where you're spending your donations. It's that project or function for which you are raising money. We can use your general fund as an example. At some point, you'll want to get a report that shows you how much money has been raised for the general fund this month, this year, etc. You will do that with a fund code. An appeal code tracks your fundraising efforts. It shows where your donations came from. For example, you will probably want to have an appeal code that represents your website so that you can determine how much money has been raised through that site. Now, let's look at where we set up an appeal and a fund code. To do that, we'll click on the Codes tab here at the top of the page. We see the first section here is Fund Codes. We can add a new one by clicking on the Add New Fund, but I'm just going to go ahead and click the Edit button next to one that's already here so that we can see the fields. It's pretty straightforward. You'll enter a description. This just tells you what the code is for, and in our example we could use General Fund. Now enter a code. The code just has to be unique. You can't have two fund codes that are the same, but it can be anything you want. The only other field here is the Cancel checkbox, and you'll check that when you no longer want to use this code. If you are raising money for a new building, for example, you might want to cancel this fund once the building is complete. The next section on the page is Appeal Codes, and it works in the same way. Again, I'll just click Edit next to one that's already here so we can see the fields. We can give it a description and a code, and we can make the appeal code inactive by unchecking the box. One difference, however, is that we have a campaign field here. A campaign is a way to group a bunch of appeal codes together. Let's say, for example, that you're raising money for a new building, but you have multiple ways of doing that. You may have a page for the website, you may have an email appeal that you send out, and you may hold a special event like at a pet store. Each of those can have their own appeal code so that you can track their success later on. But you could also create a campaign to group them together under one umbrella called the New Building Campaign. If you're using that campaign, you'll select it here. We can create campaigns from the same page, so let me back up to that page again, the Codes page. And down below we have the campaign codes, and again I'll just edit one that's already here. And again we have the description field, the code field, and the active checkbox. On this page we also have the peer-to-peer fields, and we'll cover that in a separate video. Another record we need to create before we can set up our giving option is the letter. To be technical, it's the letter body. When you send a receipt for a donation, that statement will contain a letter body. Each letter body can be unique to a giving option, which we'll see in a minute. When a gift is created through the giving option, the software will create a gift record with that letter body attached. When you send the receipt, the letter body will be part of that statement. So to set up a new letter body, this time we're going to click on the Communications tab here at the top. And the first section here is Letters. And again, I'm just going to click on one that's already here. Again, we see the description and the code and the active checkboxes just as we saw before. Below, we have a field where we can enter the letter body. And again, you don't need the salutation or the name and address fields here. The software will fill those in for you when you send the receipts. This is just the body portion of the letter. And as you can see, you can format it and change fonts and sizes and bold and underline, etc., similar to what you might do in Microsoft Word. We have one more record to create, and that's an interest code. Interest codes are simply ways to code donors so that you can get a list of donors related to their interests later on. For example, you might have an interest code called CATS so that you can contact donors who have that interest. You will create interest codes back on that codes field or page that we just started with. So I'll click the codes tab here at the top and now move down to the interest codes section. And again, we have a list of codes that have already been created for us. We'll be able to click Add New and create a new one, or edit one that's already here. Now we're ready to set up the giving option. We'll do that by clicking on the Giving Options tab here at the top of the page. And we see a list of giving options that are already created. We can add a new one just as we've seen with the other records by clicking Add New, or click Edit to look at one that's already here. The first field again is the description field, which tells us what this giving option is about. Next is the narrative field. This is the text that can carry over to the web page and is the primary way that you will communicate with your donor to explain what this giving option is about. We can format that here using the buttons at the top, or we can also format it somewhat in the web page setup itself. We can upload an image that can carry over to the web page by clicking on the Select Files button. And now we can select an interest code from the category field. When a donation is made through the web page using this giving option, the donor will have this interest code assigned to them. Enter a goal and check the Remove If Met checkbox if you want the goal amount to disappear once the goal has been met. You can also enter an expiration date for the giving option and check that box if needed. Both of these fields can be displayed in a control on the web page so that the donors know what the goal is and when this donation option will disappear. Now we can enter the appeal, the fund code, and the letter that we created earlier. Again, when a donation is made through the web page using this giving option, these fields will carry through to the gift record that is created, and you can now use the appeal and the fund code fields to produce donation reports. When you send a receipt, the letter body that you select here will be included, and that receipt will cover that letter body in that statement. Now click Submit at the bottom here to finish the giving option setup. For more information on how to use this giving option in a web page, please view the DIY Pages Setup Part 1 video.